You know, one of the concerns that I've heard a lot is when you invest in an expensive cold plunge setup with a dedicated chiller is that what if something goes wrong? What if a component breaks and needs to be replaced? How much work is it? Can I really do it myself, or do I need to send it back to, you know, the manufacturer, etc.? And so for this video, I decided I'm going to replace the water pump and the temperature sensor of this Inergize Elite chiller to kind of show you how it works and how relatively easy it is, or is supposed to be, because I've never done this on this particular chiller either. But I've just gotten the components. Here's a new temperature sensor cable, and then here is the pump, the water pump that we're gonna replace, including the power supply here, and that's the water pump. And the reason why water pump, why replace this guy as well, based on my experience, if something breaks, there is a good likelihood that it's going to be the water pump, generally speaking, with chillers. And that could be for a number of reasons. For example, the most common issue with pumps going bad is if you don't pay attention to replacing your sediment filters, you know, because if that gets clogged up and water flow is reduced, the pump has to work harder and might burn out quicker than if you have proper water flow. So for this reason, we're going to go through the replacement of the water pump, and I'm going to share some tips with you that you can use to prevent that issue from happening. But if it does, you know what to do. And so the only tools I've gotten for this is a drill, but you can also use a regular screwdriver. Most of the screws here, all of them are Phillips head. I got a wrench and a couple of zip ties, just in case I want to, you know, tidy up the cables on the inside. I'm going to remove the entire enclosure here, but depending on what you want to replace, you might not need to do this. The one thing that you likely always have to replace is the outer shell here. So we're going to remove those screws without losing them. That's going to be the biggest challenge. When you put that stuff back in, when you put the screws back in, make sure not to over tighten them. So take it easy and maybe even use a manual screwdriver. And those screws also come with tiny washers. Make sure you don't lose them. Otherwise, your chiller might not be as weather resistant anymore as it was when it came from the factory. Obviously, also make sure it's not plugged in when you mess around, so you don't damage any of the components or electrocute yourself. Alright, that goes to the side here. We're also going to remove this guy here because we need access to the temperature sensor. Now for the water pump only, you don't need to remove this because the water pump is right here. But for the temperature sensor, you have to remove this guy as well. Actually, you don't have to remove this at all. But now that we have, it don't matter. We actually need to take off this guy, and this is attached, looks like with screws here on the bottom. And one thing that you can see in here, all of those pipes and everything is insulated. That prevents condensation. That's really convenient. That prevents, you know, dripping and making a mess when the temperature differential creates condensation on those parts. So let's do the water pump first before we do anything else. Water pump is right here. It's also attached with a clamp here and screws. Can remove this guy here. And then here we have to remove, I'm gonna show you that here. Bring that in, peel away here a little bit the insulation so we get to those screws here. Those are flathead. And that we need to do so we can loosen the hoses. Okay, once this is loose, there is another one up here. At least they're conveniently located on the outside, so we can easily unscrew those guys here. The other thing then we have to remove, obviously, is the cable here. That goes all the way here to the front to the power adapter. So for this, actually, we're going to remove then this panel as well. But let's first get the pump out. Here's some water draining out. That's not a problem. Here is the pump. Now this pump is still working here. That's nothing wrong with it, so I'm going to keep it. Just going to replace it here for you so you can see how it works. And then I have to get underneath here, so we're going to move this guy a little forward here. so I get access to those screws here without getting wet. Okay, once this is out, want to be careful because there's a cable attached. Don't want to lose that. But so this here looks like there are clamps and pushing them in. Can take this guy out and put it on the side for now. Okay, now let's see where this power cord is going, and not surprisingly this power cord is going right here, and all we have to do here is replace this guy, and now the pump is gone. Now I know that my power supply is still working, but it could be, if the pump goes, it could be either your power supply or it could be the pump itself. If it's the power supply, then you could replace this unit here as well. You can see here I have the replacement power supply right here. That comes with 2 wires that go in here. I'm not going to replace it, but I'm going to show you how this would look like in here. This is basically here the control box. You can then see that you could just replace those 2 wires from the power supply if necessary as well. I'm not going to do this, as I said, because I know my power supply is still in perfect working order, but regardless. Now the other thing that we have likely in here is the temperature sensor cable. I'm gonna check this out here. This is the temperature sensor in here, and that's the black cable. Now my replacement cable is red. This is an older chiller that still uses a black cable that goes up here, and so we have to get that cable out. I'm gonna do this right away as well. So we have all the wires loose that need to be loose. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Okay, here is the temperature sensor. And you can see it has a little bit of plumber's tape around here. So I think what I'm gonna get as well is a plumber's tape then before I put everything in. And then here we have zip ties that I have to clip. So I'm gonna get pliers to clip them cleanly so as to not damage any of the cable. I'm gonna get some plumber's tape as well, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so pliers I'm gonna use here to clip off that cable tie. Might have to clip those things too. That's why I brought extra cable ties, so we can put it all neatly together and make it look pretty again. Alright, that is a 2-wire. That should be this one. Yeah, excellent. So we're gonna pull this through here. You can see here T1, that's the temperature sensor. So we can unplug this guy here. Okay. And then clip this zip tie. Alright. It's pretty tight here with all the cables. I could cut this wire because I don't need it anymore, but I don't want to do this since it's still in perfect working order. So I'm going to try to get this out cleanly. There you go. Temperature sensor cable. And put this one in. If we start from this side, looping it up through the sleeve and then inside. I think that's way easier. Okay. So now we are through here, through the sock, go back in here into the control box, put that sleeve back on, so we know it's a temperature sensor, plug it in, get this thing in here a little bit as well, make it pretty. We're gonna worry about the zip ties then in a little bit. For now, I'm gonna come back here, put some Teflon tape around this guy, around here. Okay, and this goes then, that's the sensor. That goes back in here, which is inside here, I guess, between the pump and the filter housing. So that's where it measures the temperature of the water. So it knows when the compressor has to kick in to start cooling. Doesn't have to be super tight, don't over tighten it. All right, that should do. And then I'm gonna cover it as good as I can here with the foam. That was number one. Number two, the pump. And as I said, I'm gonna reuse the existing power supply. Just gonna replace the pump itself. That's the power supply. We're gonna keep that. This cable came through here. And as I said before, I'm gonna mention to you, I'm gonna share with you some tips on how you can prolong the lifespan of those components so they hopefully not burn out and you never need to replace those things. But if you do, know that it's relatively straightforward. I mean, I'm not a plumber by any means or an electrician, but this is relatively straightforward. Anyone can do that. Just gonna apply some Teflon tape around here. There you go. On the other side as well. Alrighty, so now we're gonna plug those guys back in here. Hose number one, hose number two. Align the pump so that I can screw this back in, but before I do that I want to make sure that this is really solid. And once it is, I'm going to tighten it back up. Okay, number one. Number two. This is all tight. Alright, gonna cover this again as much as we can, the foam. So you can see what we did here. Here are the screws, two hoses, pump cable goes back there. That's the temperature sensor cable that came all the way through here. Then up here. Now we're gonna make it pretty. Well, first we're gonna connect the pump to the power supply. And then we're gonna use zip ties to make all of that stuff look pretty again. I would say that's pretty enough. And now I can put the stuff back on. Okay, panel. It just snaps in. This one we leave. We still have to secure the pump. That would be good. Otherwise we might have a vibrating noise that we don't need and want. Let's put this back in. All right, that's solid. The front panel. All right. And that panel pretty much comes on how it came off. Now mine is a little bit dinged up already, but yours is likely not gonna be like that. So it's even easier to get on. Just need to make sure that this shell is on the outside of that enclosure of the framing. Gonna put it on in one corner. We check the other side, looking good. And now it's just a matter of putting in all the screws. And while I do this, I'm gonna share with you a couple of tips that you can use to prevent components from wearing out prematurely. And the one thing I mentioned it briefly in the beginning already is to really keep on top of your filter changes. If the water flow gets down or gets reduced, especially in winter when the water is then maybe more likely to freeze in some of the components because of reduced water flow, that pump is going to have a very hard time, and if it stops sucking water or strain too much, it'll burn out. I've had this once with one of my other plungers, not an Inergize, but nonetheless, the overall problem scenario is really the same. That's really one major component. So keep an eye on replacing those sediment filters regularly. Make sure if there's a strain filter or whatever, everything is clean. You know, the lint filter on the inside, if there is one, make sure you keep an eye on that and clean them out so that water keeps flowing at the optimal flow rate, which for this unit is somewhere around 20 liters a minute. It'll show you on the display. Once you see that flow rate go down, check the filters and replace them if necessary. The other thing that you could consider is, and that's what actually I do as well, I put those units on a timer, either using the app or a mechanical timer, whatever you prefer, and I don't run them 24/7. Now they can run 24/7, don't get me wrong, but just from a mechanical perspective, if you only run them half the time, meaning 12 hours out of 24 hours, you effectively prolong the lifespan of the components. You know, and so I turn them off typically when I don't need them. And it really depends a little bit. In our case, we have solar panels, so we generate power during the day. We don't during the night. We live off batteries. And so I turn them off in the evening or at night when I don't plunge anymore, and turn them back on in the morning so the water is ready for me to plunge. That's one option. You could also do the reverse. If electricity is cheaper for you at night, let them run at night and then turn them off during the day. That's also an option. But the bottom line is, if you don't run them 24/7, there is a good chance that you'll prolong the lifespan of the pump and of all the other components in there. And if you do that in combination with keeping an eye on flow rate, you will have a lot of fun with your equipment and not have to worry about replacing stuff. But if something breaks, know that you can replace those things. Now, you just reach out to Inergize. Depending on if it's within warranty, they'll just send you the replacement. If it's out of warranty, you have to pay for those pieces, I assume. And, you know, then put them in yourself. There's no need to send the entire unit back and then be without a plunge for extended periods or pay for, you know, expensive shipping or repairs. You can pretty much do it yourself. And I really like that because ultimately it gives me some control over, you know, my equipment. I know that I can fix things if I have to, but at the same time, the idea really is to take care of that stuff so you don't have to replace anything at all. Yeah, that is it. I'm gonna put in the remainder of the screws, clean everything up, put away the zip ties, and that was it. It took me what? I mean, with all the talking, maybe 15 minutes tops. If I don't talk, if I just do it quickly, I can do it in probably less than 10 minutes. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, let me know in the comments. If you thought it was not helpful at all, let me know too. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time.